Welcome to CXWise, where we share wisdom, insights, stories, and expertise from the world of customer experience. I'm your host, Nathan Bennett, and you're about to hear real-world experiences and practical advice that will elevate your CX game, no matter your title, no matter your industry. So, without further ado, let's get wise. My guest today is Amanda Whiteside, a global CX leader who has helped scale some of the world's most recognizable brands, including Amazon, AWS, HelloFresh, Freshworks, and now Uber, where she currently leads high-impact growth and customer initiatives. Amanda brings a deep experience across B2B, B2C, SaaS marketplaces, and AI-driven organizations with a track record of aligning customer outcomes with business growth. She's led global revenue enablement and customer success functions, driven cross-functional transformation, and built inclusive, high-performing teams at scale. She's also a member of the Forbes Business Development Council and an advocate for inclusive leadership, having served on the boards of organizations focused on social impact and equity. Amanda's perspective blends operational excellence, customer obsession, and commercial impact, and we are thrilled to have her with us today. Welcome, Amanda. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well. So kind. I'm blushing.
There's more that we could say, but I fear that we must go on. Um, one of the things that we like to do on CXWise is kind of define our terms. So, Amanda, today, as you're sitting here, how do you define customer experience?
Great question. As I got into customer experience, maybe the guts of kind of 10 to 15 years ago, customer experience was defined as really just customer support.
Mm.
And I spent a lot of time with my stakeholders at that moment to help them understand that it is everything the customer interacts with in your brand. And I believe that that still very much stands true.
Absolutely. And every point that the customer touches, everything that they see, hear, and smell with their senses, I think is a part of that experience as well.
You're right.
You talked a lot about storytelling as a powerful tool in brand and customer relationships. How do you think AI can enhance or support storytelling in the CX journey for brands?
Yeah, I love storytelling, and from my days at Amazon, you get taught to write these white papers or narratives, and what kind of sets one paper out from the other is how you articulate the problem statement in a
Mm.
way that brings data forward, but also articulates what it means to the business and to customers if we solve it. So from that very kind of early stage of my career, I learned how to articulate and share with people what we were trying to do and why we were trying to do it. And I've carried a lot of that through my work over the years and tried to hone and not just do it in a white paper sense, but also be able to do it in different modalities and in PowerPoints and pitches. And so I believe it extends not just internally as you kind of convince stakeholders and leadership that you're going in the right direction, but also with your customers. And you can see that in the most compelling brands that have the strongest customer experience around the world, where they're able to capture the excitement and passion for their customers and keep them alive and excited and engaged, and do that through those different modalities, just slightly different. Instead of white papers, it's
Mm.
how do you engage with them through social media? How do you engage with them through, physical experience? But to your question of how can AI enhance that, well, instead of it being a brand campaign or something that's very high level that has to really touch the masses, AI can bring parts of the customer kind of journey forward or very specific to you as a person at scale that we haven't been able to do. So if you remember, for a long time, we would have emails that you would receive and it would just say, "Dear customer," because
Hmm.
we weren't able to pull your name through
Yeah.
into emails. And, it's a very subtle thing, but it's a really important part of making the customer feel part of that community. And so as AI gets smarter and we get more nimble with our data sets, and it's able to mine and pull different aspects of what's working for you in a brand and what's not, it can spot problems, it can bring forward different customizations, and it can give you a sense that you're really heard by the brand. And really, that's all we want as humans. We want to be able to
Mm.
be heard, we want to be able to be seen. And being able to do that at scale as a brand is an incredibly special thing to do. And I think brands are really starting to tap into that. They're really figuring out ways in which they can surprise and delight their customers at a very local, individual level. And I think that's super special, and we should do as much of that as possible that, brings the brand and the customer together while still ensuring the customer is comfortable.
I'm wondering also, as we have all of these advances in AI and automation, it's increasingly taking over parts of the customer experience. How do we make sure that we're still remaining truly customer centric and bringing the humanity to our customer experiences?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a colleague recently where we were looking at implementing AI bots into one of our workflows. And as exciting as that technology is, and as advanced as it will be to be able to automate and do tasks for us, it's really important that we implement checks and balances before we go and roll something like that out. And, I heard of an example recently where a B2B company had implemented some type of AI agent to do its outbound prospecting. And so suddenly we're getting calls and emails from a bot that's trying to assess whether we're interested in a product or service, validate the lead, and then pass it off to an AE, which from a company perspective, it really starts to look at your BD or SDR teams and think, well, we can create some redundancy there. We can have them go off and do better things. And then we can start to automate this workflow for customers. But what happened is they ended up churning through all of their leads and started to create a really poor negative experience for the customer because they weren't showing up in a human way. They were just sending out blasting spamming. And that's really dangerous for your brand because you can find yourself in a difficult place where you've over communicated with your customer. You set out with good intentions, but you've created a reputation that you're just a noisy company and you don't want to be worked with. And so that was an example of like a good intention with AI. They wanted to roll it out, but you can imagine how many AI agents can get through a pretty long lead list that a human can't. So they churned through that at a massive rate, and within a month they had no pipeline. So it's really important to implement not just kind of how you think about rolling something like this out, but having early stages of human intervention so that you can make sure that you're enhancing the customer experience or at least keeping it at par with what humans can offer, and certainly not going down a route where you're destroying or finding it in a position where customers are not getting that experience that they would from a human. I'm excited for the next 10 years as we develop this, but there's no doubt about it. I think anyone who is involved in AI needs to, implement policies and compliance and probably be a little bit more over pragmatic in the beginning until we get some confidence and some safety that something works and works well. The downside of that is that requires companies to have AI experts or CX experts that are specialized in AI so that they can have a keen eye over it, or they can make sure that things run well and it isn't just someone taking AI as a project and just setting it up without really understanding the complexity of it. And not all companies can afford a dedicated AI team or a dedicated CX person that knows about this stuff. So we're going to bump our heads. Some companies are going to get it right and wrong. And just hopefully for the rest of us, we don't bring AI to a place where we don't really value its impact that it can have in the world.
Well, I love the story that you told about how AI significantly impacted the customer experience in a negative way. I'm wondering if there's a flip side of that you can think of, like a story and experience where AI improved the customer's journey in a significant way.
Yeah. I think AI is making the biggest amount of headway in customer support. We've seen it time and time again. In my time at Freshworks, we sold customer support software and we had a co-pilot embedded in there. And you can see that the very manual work from customer support of very common experience, as you would have seen within the broader industry, of taking a series of tickets, being able to automate and templatize some of the responses, being able to mine some long emails and understand exactly what the problem statements are and push those to back end product teams for kind of case deep dives, and being able to put together case summaries that would have taken hours to do for customer support specialists. And
well, you've been embedded in this space for so long, and I'm wondering, based on your expertise and what you're seeing now, can you give us an insight into any emerging trends that you think will redefine how businesses interact with their customers?
Yeah, I'm really excited about sentiment analysis. I think it's interesting as we think about not just assessing text and that type of communication from our customers, but being able to look at how they experience things in different ways through clicks on a page, on a site, or if they're on a call. When I'm leaning in, I'm showing interest and
Mhm.
intrigue. And we can start to look at those human behaviors and assign a sentiment like a buying interest. So I've seen that in some conversational intelligence capabilities where if you can assess that on a call together between us, like I'm showing those natural buying signs, I'm using encouraging language, I'm indicating to you that I'm interested in the product. And then you can also see on the journey, well, hey, I'm not so interested and I disengage there. I think that's a fascinating way in which we're able to assess something about the experience that's very real time. And with that, it helps you understand, well, what is your customer feeling without them telling you? And there's a long way to go in that space, but I think it starts to help you as a seller from a selling experience in a B2B environment really figure out, like, what am I doing well? Where did they show intrigue? What were those subtle signs that, particularly in an environment where we're more virtual than ever, right? Back in the day when we were in person and you were a very astute seller, you could maybe pick that up. But now it's done for you in a virtual environment where there's a screen behind us and it's interpreted by technology, which I think is amazing. And so as we enhance those types of insights, it only just helps us understand our customers better and then attune our products and our pitches accordingly.
Uh, I'm wondering, you talked a little bit about the necessity for brands to have sort of a CX specialist for AI, those brands that could afford it. And I'm wondering if there are any other CX roles that will be impacted by AI. Do you feel like the automation is fully taking over when we think about like agentic AI just around the corner? Or do we still crave that human touch that we were talking about before?
There's no doubt about it that human touch will still be necessary at times of escalation points, particularly if we come back to the customer support. We know that when you want to speak to someone, you want to speak to someone. So those functions will never be entirely redundant. And I believe that that will remain the case as even as we get deeper into the specific use cases. But in terms of specialists within an organization, these roles are evolving. We noticed at my time at Freshworks, when we would sell a Copilot product or an AI product, the customers would be so keen to have it in part of the contract, but the adoption was always a difficult one because actually some of the kind of push and play items that or benefits that you would see out of Copilot, maybe text summarizer, were very easy to switch on. But some of the more complex things required it embedded into your KB. It required different aspects of knowledge from your business or different tools that needed to be connected. And that's really hard for, say, a customer support team or even just a normal business team or IT team to have the specialism to do that. And so for a company to have to build in their own AI team that I don't think it's a CX team that knows AI. I think it's more of a specialist AI team that knows
I know
CX.
CX. Yeah, that's a
But
good
those
point.
are but those are different, they're different skill sets altogether. And so you have to think about kind of breeding a new type of animal or a new type of talent in your organization that we don't have today, which is exciting for the generation that's coming through in their career paths to be able to spot that and see that opportunity. But building that is a huge amount of investment, and a company really needs to be behind AI in a big way. And it's something that is a challenge for many businesses, particularly as we still see redundancies across the B2B SaaS space, and they have to be intentional about what they want to build and how they want to build.
We talked before about, excuse me, sentiment analysis and how that can be used to heighten or interpret the interaction that's happening. And I'm wondering, because customer success is often viewed as reactive, solving problems when they arise, what steps can organizations take to make customer success more proactive and predictive?
I spent a lot of time looking at in the B2B space, understanding all of the sales tech and MarTech that connects our systems together. And I think how we've evolved some of our technology landscape over the last decade our tools are incredibly proliferated and siloed, and those systems don't always connect. They may connect to a central data lake, but even then, the data is really dirty, very messy, and really needs organized in a way in which an AI system can pick it up and read it and interpret it. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there to bring that forward. And if you can build your infrastructure for your technology in a way that allows you to do that, it allows your systems and tools to be smarter and therefore be proactive. But it isn't the case that you get AI, you plug it in, and suddenly it's a proactive system and it gives you what you need. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And so, making sure that those systems connect is the first part. And then after that, it's making sure that you adjust them and tweak them in a way that they can bring that information to the customer when they need it, and not just when they need it, but how they're there to receive it. And that's a complexity as well. We're finding that even in Uber Eats right now, as we want to inform our merchants about things that are going on around their orders and their deliveries and refunds and anything that might be coming up. How do we meet them where they are with that information? People are getting a lot of emails these days. Do they want text messages? We're kind of running out of those modalities to make sure that when they want to receive this information, they receive it packaged up in the right way for them to digest it. So I think there's definitely an aspect of being proactive and bringing customers, prompts and push notifications however we can. But there's no doubt that the channels are getting noisy, and there's not many channels left to explore, as particularly if every company is exploring every different channel.
I think Uber Eats is doing really well in terms of their customer experience. I kind of followed Amazon's approach in just how easy it is to get a refund when something hasn't gone as expected. It's just effortless. It's something's wrong. Was something missing? You didn't get, what you ordered, or it just didn't taste right, or whatever it was. And then no problem. We'll get you your money back. That is such a refreshing experience.
Uber is becoming a marketplace, much like Amazon, and with that, it has to take responsibilities in a similar way. But it's a complex model in that Uber Eats has kind of three customers. So you have your merchant, which is your restaurant. You have your customer, which we call an eater. So you're an eater, I'm an eater. And then the rider that's delivering the food for you, and then you'll have your end customer. So you have multiple customers in that ecosystem, and so it's a difficult triangle, because if you satisfy your eater, we give you that refund. You're not going to necessarily satisfy your merchant if it wasn't their fault, or if there was an issue with the rider. And so what I really love about these types of marketplaces and these types of business is trying to find the sweet spot of satisfying that kind of three-pronged customer base. Which isn't easy. And you have to really think deeply about where you set yourself a clear set of policies, and cracking down on fraud and bad behavior is really important, and being able to spot that early, because a genuine mistake is a genuine mistake, and we figure out a way between that cohort to take responsibility. But when you have fraud and you have bad behavior of maybe customers gaming the system, or whoever it might be, merchants, riders, whatever, how are we addressing that and getting on top of that so we maintain a high bar for the overall experience of the platform?
That's so right. And my gosh, what a logistical CX nightmare it must be. But I mean, honestly, you're doing very well. So congratulations and thank you. Because as an eater, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the kind of convergence of a B2B B2C model.
Amanda, you have been a leader for so long in your career. You've led teams across various domains. I'm wondering what leadership qualities you feel are most important when leading initiatives that focus on change. Could be AI, could be customer experience, but change is so difficult within organizations. And I'm wondering what your approach has been in the past to keep unity, to keep motivation alive, and to keep your employees happy.
Yeah, great question. I'm a big lead with empathy leader. I really believe in understanding deeply what my stakeholders' motivations are, and finding the space in between us that allows us to figure out a path forward. And it isn't easy, particularly in these highly complex environments where there are multiple stakeholders, multiple cross-functional teams that you have to pre-align. At this level, I would say I almost spend at least 50% of my time trying to seek that alignment on behalf of my organization or as part of the broader business. And it's a serious investment, because you have to maybe sit down with teams and people multiple times to help land the message. this is really where storytelling comes in,
Mm.
because if you can paint that picture and do it well, and then stay close to your teams, listen to the feedback, listen to the challenging and difficult conversations, and figure out collectively that we want to find a solution, then anything is possible. I wouldn't fear any level of change or new initiative that you couldn't do if you had the right relationships with your stakeholders. Unfortunately, globally, we find ourselves with different personalities and slightly different perspectives, and we can be limited by not getting time with our peers in the same room, and that that disrupts our ability to have strong relationships. But I think earning trust with your peers is an incredibly important, valuable skill, and I would advocate, and I do so with my teams, that they need to be hand in hand with their stakeholders, and they need to be listening and pushing forward, and remaining connected with them. And beyond all of that, I think all problems are somewhat solvable. Bring data, bring articulate conversation, bring healthy debate, and anything can be pushed forward if it's the right approach for the business, as you put it first.
We talk about little moments of surprise and delight in a customer experience or a customer journey. And we know it's so easy to share those negative stories of customer experience, but I wonder if there's a surprising or unique customer experience you've had as a consumer that stayed with you, that has been a sort of surprise and delight moment.
Yeah. Um, I had a recent furniture delivery experience that I thought was going to be a disaster. I've recently moved to New York City, and the experience of getting stuff shipped to your home is a little bit different to knowing how to do things in London and the UK. Very familiar with how things get delivered, how to do refunds, how to kind of call up customer support, and while most of that is the same over here, there's culturally some differences that make you a little concerned about how you're going to approach that when something goes wrong. And I have to say that the experience where the bit of furniture was delivered and it was damaged, my eyes rolled back into my head, and I thought, my goodness, who am I going to call? How am I going to get this to work? How are they going to pick it up? It took me 3 men in a lift to get it to where I needed to get to in my apartment. And now I have to go and return it and do all of that again. And the service, once I called them, I got straight through to the associate, and they very quickly helped me with my problem. And what was wonderful about it is it was one of those kind of touch style phones where it was like, have you got a problem with your delivery? Yes, they knew it was something that any customer would be agitated about, and they
Sure.
routed those contacts directly through to a human. And that for me is like really understanding the customer sentiment ahead of time, and knowing that putting blocks and barriers in front of that is only going to drive agitation. And so I was put straight through to a human operator. They listened to me being frustrated, telling them my whole story. And within a couple of hours, they had it solved for me. And they didn't just offer to pick it up at the door down in the lobby. They offered to have someone come up, wrap it up for me again, put all that annoying styrofoam packaging back on it. And, it wasn't something I had to worry about. It was something that they took complete control of. And they had another replacement shipped out the next day. So I barely had to wait. And suddenly, when you feel like you're in safe hands, someone's dealing with it, your shoulders relax, you step backwards, and you say, someone's dealing with this. This is
Yeah.
great. This is one less thing I have to worry about in the world. And I really appreciated that with all the other things that are going on in my busy life and everyone's busy life. I think it's important. So that type of service is something that makes me feel like I can be a better customer. And I wrote a long note to them after to say, like, I'm so impressed, and thank you for just taking the lead and solving it. And I'm really happy with it overall. And so it's not easy for companies to be able to do that on a one-to-one basis, and some do slip through the cracks, but where you can build that type of model and identify those opportunities to really help your customers in times of need, I'll never forget that company. And I think it's wonderful that, that I'm able to tell that stories to others, and that's the word of mouth that you want to be able to share for kind of broader. That's the best validation and best reputation sharing you can ever ask for.
Yeah, it's amazing how much trust that builds. And I like how you said, I just was able to take a step back, and that's just one less thing that I have to worry about. I love that. Not all the time do I get to talk to somebody who's really interested in brand storytelling. And that's kind of where my heart is. And I'm wondering kind of who your favorite brand storytellers are, or are there specific brands that you feel like are really, really good at telling their brand story and creating a customer experience even through that methodology?
I really love how brands are actually handing off the mic to their customers. And you see a lot of this on TikTok where Zara is a great example of this. I don't know how they're doing it right now, but they are really handing it off, not just to kind of influencers anymore, just everyday people that are buying their clothes and buying their fashion and then sharing the stories of what they like and what they don't like and doing these unboxings. And for women in that community, it feels very connective to seeing the clothes on a real person and hearing their opinion. And they've done it at such scale that it doesn't feel staged. It
Mm.
doesn't feel like you're talking to a specific influencer. It feels like your best friend is on TikTok telling you, or on a video telling you that they got this great outfit and you should go and check it out. And I think the way in which they've been able to do that, and now that I've, seen it happen not just in the UK, but also coming to this side of the world, it happens over here too. It must happen globally. And that reach is really phenomenal. And they've done it in a way where they've not had to force it. It's not been Zara doing their own promoted adverts that I think people are tired of, to be
Mhm.
honest. And it generates that level of authenticity, which is so valuable these days. And so I love how brands are getting much more experimental and bringing those experiences down to a more local people, human level.
I love that, like how brands are handing off the mic
Yeah.
to their customers. So smart. And the genuineness of a platform like TikTok, like you've got to be genuine, you have to be real, otherwise it just doesn't work. And the users and the platform itself will call you out on that. It's so for brands who understand how to use that particular platform is remarkable, and I love that example.
Yeah. And I think even if you look at where AI can bring that, you got to give a shout out to Gen Z as well. I think
Hmm.
there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of creativity in that generation for how they think about brand campaigns and being incredibly multimodal and being very instant with a trend. And you can see it now more than ever where trends hit multiple social platforms. They take off, and it might be a song, it might be a meme, it might be something that actually kind of brings us together as a community or as the world, where everyone is talking about that one thing, which is so captivating, and it creates FOMO, but it creates excitement. And there's a lot of that I'm sure not 9 out of 10 times it doesn't always work, but when it works, it can be so huge for a brand. And I love being in the audience for those types of moments, because I think those are the things that can be really brand defining and can start to really show how you set aside from your competitors. So it's I love being a student of that, and I love seeing how different brands are doing it well. But it's an interesting place to be versus 20 years ago when it was a billboard and it was
Yeah.
something else and it was a one-off campaign. Now you're building a journey and a story with brands that go on for, a longer period.
I love that. And that's a great place to end. Amanda, you have been so generous with your time. Thank you for sharing us, or thank you for sharing with us your wisdom, your insights, your stories, your expertise. You've made us all a little bit CX wiser. Thank you so much, my friend. I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much.